Welcome to the podcast where we take a deep dive into the stories behind construction business leaders. We will share how they got started, how they found success, and the lessons learned along the way. I'm your host, Eric Fortenberry. Welcome to Builder Stories.
How's it going, everybody? I am excited to be here. We are in a new year. We've got some great guests lined up for this year. But today I've got a special guest. It's Matt Millsap. He is the founder and CEO of Building Company Number 7. They are located in Nashville, Tennessee. Matt and his company, they are a design build firm, primarily focusing on additions, remodelings, but they also do some new builds, custom homes, as well as a few spec homes here and there. So really excited to have you on the show. Welcome to Builder Stories, Matt.
Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it. Happy to be here.
Yeah, so why don't you tell us just a little bit of background? What does Building Company Number 7 do in your words?
In my words, what we do is we're celebrating 16 years this year. Started out like in the recession, 2008, is when we started the company. We focus primarily on large format, historic renovations and additions. Usually an average project would be like a whole house gut. And we've got some kind of historic laws here in Nashville and in the neighborhoods that deserve that they have some requirements that we're very used to. And so we win a lot of that work because of our experience in that area. So design build, we do have a team of carpenters that work with us as well. And we run those. And then we do, anywhere from 2 to 10 custom homes per year, just depending on what's, comes our way and life cycle and all that kind of stuff. And then we do a few spec homes here and there. Once upon a time, 10 years ago, we did a lot of spec homes. And then as the market kind of just got a little, it got to where I didn't understand it anymore. So we just went back to what we knew. We kind of dialed back in. All right, what do we do? What do we do really well? And that's, the customs and the additions and whatnot.
Yeah, that's great. So I'm curious, how'd you get into construction in the first place? Like what drew you to the industry? What led you to want to come in and build homes and do these remodels?
I grew up and my dad was a real handy guy, and I was always like his, handing him his tools and helping him, renovate a bathroom or whatever, build a screen and porch on our houses. So I was always there doing carpentry with him, always fascinated with woodworking tools and woodworking. And as I got older, I had a lawn care company for a little bit, and then that kind of morphed into an excavation company. And so we were doing that in the mid 90s. And then I got into new home construction with a guy who taught me everything I know about construction. He taught me how to build, how to run a business profitably, how to build profitably. And he taught me all the ins and outs of building. And ultimately, he and I partnered up on the excavation piece. That lasted for about, we were doing segmental retaining walls, which was real big in the mid 90s. And then as that market kind of got soft, the spec home market here in Middle Tennessee started to pick up. He needed some help. So I came on with him as a project manager, and I did that for, I think, around 5 or 6 years. And ultimately, at the end of the day, I was vice president of that company. We were managing about 400 homes a year. So I was really getting to know the business and the number side of it. Already had kind of learned the construction piece of it. And then 2008 happened. And at that point, I had just been careful. I was still young. I was really young back then. Had saved a bunch of money and just was like, what's my next step? So his ship was sinking. And I just looked at him in late 2008. And I said, Mark was his name. I was like, Mark, I said, man, the captain's got to go down with the ship, but the first mate, I can start swimming, right? And so I helped him like unwind as best I could. It was sad, but this guy that had taught me everything I know was going down pretty hard.
Right.
So then I started, just started doing bathrooms. I was like, what is there going to be a market for? Spec homes. I'm not going to get into construction, do that. So we just started doing a bathroom. Actually we were working all those homes from 2008 when people were like tearing the doors off, taking the HVAC. I had built a bunch of relationships with bankers just from being in the spec home world. Well, these bankers were now taking back houses that were trashed.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of our start was we would get a list from the bank and they'd be like, you need to go look at these 5, 10 houses, make a list, shoot us a price. And then we want you to go replace the carpet, put the HVAC back together, replace the cabinetry, all the, smoke detectors, any of that stuff. So that kind of as we were doing that, we started to do the renovations and stuff. And we learned that we're in a suburb of Nashville and there just wasn't a big wealth center there. So we quickly learned that the wealth, here in Middle Tennessee was centered in Nashville, and moved operations to Nashville in the first probably 2-3 years of business, as I remember. And that's as we, started coming out of a recession, the market in Nashville it never took the full hit that the rest of the nation did. It was still kind of insulated. It was up and coming. Nashville's a really popular place now. Our population has doubled or tripled since then. Moved the company up here, and I started doing more and more larger projects and worked our way up. We did a couple notable projects with some architects here in town, and that just kept building on itself. Through the years, we just kept climbing that little reputation ladder. And, there was a time in the first 5-7 years we were spending 5% of our money on marketing, of our top line revenue on marketing. And then that started to, as word of mouth picked up, that we spent less on marketing and just focused on creating the company. And word of mouth, we just started, in Nashville, it's a kind of they call it not the world's, but a big small town. Like, people talk, you do, like any neighborhood, you do some work in this little part, and then the next thing you know, you have 3 projects on the street.
Sure.
So we kept going with that until probably 5 or 6 years ago. I got I was getting these leads, and I would bring an architect in. Well, sometimes the architect, I would say, hey, this is our project, I'd like to bring you in. Well, a lot of times the architect would hijack our client and be like, oh, now they're my client. And then they would introduce them to 3 or 4 other contractors. So after about 2 years of that, I was like, how can I not have that happen? I had a conversation with a couple of them. A couple of them were like, oh, we understand. Yeah, we got you. And a couple of them were like, how dare you tell me what to do with my client? I was like, but that's my client. It was not your client. And so, I went back and forth on that, and we figured out a way to bring some design staff on, and part-time at first. And then we started building our design build efforts, and we figured out we got some younger architects who were really hip on the technology, and were able to turn drawings around faster than some of these, architects that have been around for 15, 20, 30, 40 years. And we started winning jobs, and it created stickiness with our clients. So we were able to, I didn't have to refer out an architect. I just hey, here's our design process. Here's our design build agreement. Here's what we can do for you. And so that kind of, we started winning more jobs because we had less competition when the jobs got to us. And we kind of kept that under our hat for probably the first 3 years, because we were still getting a lot of work from local architects. And then, as the word got out, and then we rebranded the website, and then we really started to pour out to people like, hey, we are a design build firm. Let us help you with your project. And that's how we got to where we're at today. And now we're almost exclusively design build. We do look at other projects, and we do a handful of some of the architects in town. We still work for them, but by and large, probably 80% of our work is our own.
Sure. I can imagine once you've got the capabilities in-house, it's hard to sort of lose a little bit of that control after.
Yeah, I think one of the big things for us is we did have these younger architects who, and this isn't a dig on architects, but they oftentimes they get really consumed with their design and their design intent. They kind of lose sight of what the client wants. What we prided ourselves in is we were listening for the client. What do you need? What do you want? How can we make this work for you? How can we design this project so it meets all your goals without having to shove some design format down their throat, for lack of a better term. So we just really prided it. We just listened, and then we designed to what we heard, And that goes over really well with clients. Now, there's some projects we don't do like super over the top design heavy projects. We're more of like a pragmatic design build firm. So we're just trying to like add square footage, a master and all that kind of stuff. And just really not so much put the artistic thumbprint on it, but just
Sure.
listen to our clients and give them what they want.
Man, that's an awesome story, Matt. I love the fact that you grew up working with your dad doing construction, just like as part of the family helping out. Like what a great way to sort of have that love and passion from your very early ages, and then to go into the trades and kind of doing multiple different trades, not just one thing. Sounds like you got a good kind of wide swath of experience there, but then taking on that project manager role for several years, understanding it enough to earn your promotion up to vice president, running the business. I'm curious, like what was it like, going out on your own? I mean, you just saw, the terrible, times at the market in 2008, and then to go out, take that leap of faith after you saw what could happen to another business owner. Like, what was it like in those early days? Like, to get, well, what can you tell us about kind of like what were you feeling, and how did you convince yourself that you should do this? And like, what were the biggest differences of like, instead of working for someone else, now you're taking all the risk and you're the one at the top. Like, what was that like?
It was one of the things during that, as I was working my way up in the industry, is I always just kept my personal overhead really low. So when the market crashed, I didn't have a lot of bills to pay. I didn't have a big house. I was just kept my overhead really low. So I was able to like step into the business. And, the way the company I worked for was set up, I was kind of my own man anyway. Like no one was checking in on me. I was like kind of the top dog. And, for all intents and purposes, I was kind of self-employed. I was, making my own schedule, doing my things. I had some meetings I had to attend, but stepping into the self-employed piece, my big concern is like I had seen a lot of these guys go down because of their debt load and they were over leveraged. And so my thing was like, well, I'm not going to have a debt load because I'm going to be, cash flowing these projects with the client's money and, going after those projects. So I just started out really small, conservatively, and we would, the remodeling industry, we take deposits and that kind of gets us going. So I was just careful not to over leverage myself. I was always watching the numbers. I read the book, The E-Myth, right out the gate. And so I was always the company I came from did not have a lot of SOPs, and the guy was a little older and, I had to fight him just to get an email. So just to get an email or to get a BlackBerry, he was like, I've been doing this with a legal pad for 20 years. You don't need an email address and you don't need a BlackBerry. Excuse me. And so I was big on SOPs right from the gate. I was big on the accounting being correct right from the gate. I was big on creating a company. The reason it's Buildco 7 is, and not Matt Millsap Construction, is I started with the end in mind. I knew I wanted to build a company where it was not all reliant on me and it wasn't just Matt Millsap Construction. So we started building those systems from the jump. So that's been a constant in the company since the day we started. It's having systems, policy, process, procedure, subcontractor agreements, good contracts. So all the stuff that really like kind of make a good business, we were really heavy on and still are to this day. That's one of the things that sets us apart. And our tagline used to be the professional remodeling and renovation experts, because I saw in the previous life that I was in, that, the subcontractors were so unprofessional. Sometimes you get invoices in on like a back of a napkin and they turn them in on Thursday and they'd want to get paid on Friday. And it was so stressful. And I just remember my boss every Friday, he'd be sitting behind his desk and he'd just be writing the checks. And I'm like, man, Friday, I want to be like heading into the weekend and hanging out with my family and hanging out with my friends. And I just couldn't see the joy in like 4:00 on Friday, having this parade of subcontractors come through my office. So that was a driving factor for me too, is like, how do I want to pay them and I want to do it efficiently, but I don't want to do it on Friday. So one of the first things I did was we switched our payday from Friday to Tuesdays. So you could turn your invoice in at the end of the week, but we're going to cut you a check on Tuesday. And that was one of the very first systems we put in place. And that was just out of peace of mind for me. So I could be like heading into the weekend, and, some weekends I worked, but I didn't have that big stress on Friday, didn't have that big stress on Monday. And then we're ripping checks and get people paid, on Tuesdays, which was a lot of subs. They just didn't understand that. They're like, what do you mean you pay on Tuesdays? I was like, yeah, Tuesday, not Friday. And, it took a little bit of getting used to it. And again, another process that we put into play there just to relieve stress and streamline things and just make it more efficient for all of us.
Yeah, I mean that man, you're singing from the high hills here. I mean that's like, the number one thing that I've heard from people that I've talked to on here, and just in all of our job trade user base, is like they don't understand the importance of putting systems and processes in place. And many of them though are, first time entrepreneurs, business owners. They've been part of a business, or they just took over a business, or whatever it may be, and they didn't have that experience that you got being part of that first company and seeing the challenges that they had. And so it's like you went into this knowing exactly what you didn't want to happen, and came in with a plan to solve all of those problems by having clearly defined systems of processes, the standard operating procedures. I mean, I hope that everyone out there listening, like, you don't have to learn this stuff the hard way, but you do need to understand what you don't know and what you need to put in place. Being able to have that insight, it sounds like that really helps set you up for success right out of the gate. As I described in my keynote on in Job Trade Connect last week, I mean, systems and processes, they're like the framework for your entire business, like the foundation to build upon. And if that's not there, then you're going to continue to struggle until you realize that, like, you got to be organized, and you got to have the right tools, the right technologies, the right systems and processes in place to make sure that this is scalable and it can work for you. I mean, I love switching from, I've never heard anyone do that. And that's awesome. Switching from Friday to Tuesday, because that's exactly what happened in our construction business. It's like a parade of subs, and they're banging on the door. Now we're not focused on work. We're focused on, where's my check? It's overloading our office. I mean, that's awesome. I mean, we ended up actually pushing it out a couple of weeks too, so that we weren't just like paying out immediately, because, again, that didn't really give us enough time to process. And one of the processes we put in place is like, hey, every single, PO, or sorry, every single bill, it needed to have a PO or a work order number on it. And if we didn't, already kind of guarantee that amount to you, then, we just started rejecting them, because we couldn't keep a handle, and we were overpaying, double paying, it was just all over the place. And so, it sounds like you started to kind of work through this from the very beginning. And I think that must have really set the tone right for everyone.
And it got drilled in my head. I'll never forget, my boss would, on Friday, it would just, he was so unorganized. He would have a stack of invoices a foot high, and he would just start picking up the phone. Hey, lot 20, is the framing done? Okay, good. He'd hang up and he'd call me back, and he would literally call me 100 times on Thursday and Friday. And I'd be like, boss, I was like, can you please like consolidate this to one phone call, so you're not like, so I'm not answering the phone 100 times. And that was a big driver for me to see how that, like, it was really annoying, and I couldn't really work, because I knew that as soon as I got into something and sure enough, my phone would ring, and he would call me back. And how about this? And how about that? And what about the carpet here? And what about the paint there? And is he done with this? And, it's just terribly inefficient. So yeah, I really got scarred. And that drove home to me the importance of those processes and procedures. And like you said, we tweaked it we started, all right, turn it in on the 1st, get paid on the 15th, turn it in on the 15th, get paid on the 30th. So we refined that, over the years too, for the exact reasons you said, cash flow, and give us time to like approve those invoices and make sure the work is done, and give the accountant time to make sure it hasn't been billed already. Because subs are great, but most subs aren't the greatest business people. So they'll often be like, hey, you owe me for the Johnson job, and be like, no, we paid you. Be like, no, you haven't. Be like, all right, well, it's check number 1512, and we wrote it on the 10th, and here's your, and all that. Oh yeah, you're right. So, we wanted to eliminate that 15, 20 minutes of interaction with the sub. So it was very near to my heart.
Yeah. It was really, it was very challenging, like, cause that they're not very organized and that they really don't have a good handle on their own books and their own processes. And it's like, I can't tell you the number of times like we got, double billed, and I could never like directly 100% confidently say like this was intentional.
Mhm.
You always wonder, but
Right.
it's just like, no matter what, it can't happen. It was like, death by a thousand cuts. Like when you're just letting these things slip over and over and over again. And like, we weren't catching it either when we ran the construction business. And so it's just like, you can't build a business like that. And really they shouldn't be doing that either, but they just don't know because they're not organized and they don't have the processes. And so like, at least when we started tracking it, that enabled us to, without, getting into a big, heated debate that, was a long drawn out, fight in front of everyone, we could just very clearly say, hey, look, man, it was paid on this day. Here's the documentation. Like, I don't know what to tell you, but we got the record of it.
Yeah, you're paid. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the thing. Like we, double pay a $30,000 invoice twice.
Hmm.
Will you go out of business? Depends how big you are, right? Can you absorb 30 grand 2 times? Is your bookkeeper paying attention? So when, even with the sophisticated as we are now, 7 years ago, I remember we had a bookkeeper and she paid a $35,000 invoice 2 times and then almost paid it a third time. And when the third time, I was like, all right, the first 2 times I'm going to put on the sub. I said, but this third time is on you. So like, it's time to go.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And it's like once they've already done whatever they've done, distributed the money, paid it out, like it's like, okay, well, hey, we made an error. Now we need to take it back. Well, they don't have it. It's like, okay, well, then we're just going to take it out of your next paycheck. And it's like the whole system gets out of whack when, when these mistakes happen, regardless how it happens. You gotta correct it, but then it puts everybody in a terrible bind. And it just, at the end of the day, it's just, you can't operate a business that way.
Oh my gosh. We had a drywall sub. We double paid him. And he was like, well, no, he goes, don't worry about it. He goes, I'll just give you credit on your next couple invoices. I was like, no, thanks, man. I was like, I want that 10 grand back like today. And, we worked it out, but yeah. So yeah, they get the money and they're like, whoo, got one over. Well, like we like to think that they're being honest. And I think by and large, most are, but I felt like in this instance, he was like, oh man, we got him now. So,
Yeah.
again, most people are honest, but I would say that's an exception.
So I'm curious, on the other side of the house, with the accounts receivable, kind of managing the cash flow in, tell us a little bit, more about kind of how do you structure your payment schedules? I mean, you talked earlier about the importance of collecting deposit up front. Like, how does that work for you? And I'm sure you might have had some lessons either at this business or the previous one that might have helped shape that as well.
I think one of the things that works for us, and it's talked about in different forums like RA and some other guys, is like there's that lump sum, and we switched from lump sum to cost plus years ago, and the deposit is important because it locks you into the work. Like, all right, we're good. The contract is good now. We've got a little bit of money to start materials going out the door, but. So how we do it in the state of Tennessee, you can collect 30% upfront. And we have to put that in our contracts. And I always preach that to any client that we're presenting to. I was like, hey, 30% is the max. If someone asks you for 50 or 75 or anything, a dime over 30, I said, they can't do that. I said, and for you, the client, it's not that smart. So and of course, when the job grows to like over $1 million, it's hard to collect 300 grand from someone on $1 million job. We'll lower it to 15 or 20% just to, on the larger scale projects, but that deposit. And then I think the biggest thing that really started helping our cash flow in the whole scenario was that, you turn in on the 1st, you get paid on the 15th, you turn in on the 15th, you get paid on the 30th. So at that point, you're always working with the client's money because we're not a bank, right? We're not a bank. Now, do we have a line of credit with the bank? Sure. Do we like to use it? Absolutely not. But that thing, which many CFOs have been like, wow, that's really smart. I was like, well, I did it out of necessity. And I was just trying to think, how can I stop being so stressed? And how can we get the cash flow like kind of evened out? As a contractor, there's that joke, right? We either have $50 in our checking account or $500,000 in our checking account. Like there's no middle ground. We're either broke or we're flush with cash. And I wanted to even that out. So instead of having these big waves, we tried to minimize the waves. So, and that is something, I think I started that like maybe 8 or 9 years ago, and it just has really helped streamline cash flow.
And so so you're saying you submitted the invoice to the client on the
hmm
1st and the 15th, and then basically gave them 2 weeks to pay it?
Well, no, that's an even better part of the story, right? They get 5 days.
Okay, 5
So
days.
we submit the invoice to the client on the first. They have 5 days to dispute, pay, or whatever. But the subcontractor submits on the first. That gives us, we usually, there's actually a 2-day lag in there. So the client or the subcontractor invoices are due on the 28th. We invoice client on the first. Client pays by the 5th. So we have like a week in there to like mess around with it.
Got it.
So yeah, that's how we're always invoicing the client for work performed, and then they're paying us for work performed. And then once we get paid, and we have that clause in our contract, paid when paid. So we pay our subs when we get paid. And most of the time that works. If you have a really good sub who's really great at what he does, he's a really shrewd or good businessman, he might, give us a little pushback. But, when you're working with larger scale subcontractors, it's usually not an issue. And we rarely get kickback on those payment terms, but
Sure.
we also stick to them as well, right? Like we're like, these are our terms, and it's in our subcontractor agreement. And so if they want to question it, they can do that on the front end.
Yeah. And I know too, like as we struggled in the construction business to collect payments, and AR was just a huge disaster for us. Trying to pull the paid on paid was very difficult because the subs knew that we were not any good at collecting, and that they didn't want to basically be punished for that. And so as we got better and we implemented, these new systems and these new payment schedules, we were more able to do that. For some of the larger guys, like you said, I mean, the smaller guys, it's definitely hard. If they get put in a bind and they can't pay their guys, well, then they can't get them to show up the next day. So I think it definitely is, as you get the larger subs, like you said, the paid on paid can work really good. But again, it's not really an issue when you've got a very clearly defined, payment schedule. The client knows when the draws are coming, they're prepared. Are your draw schedule, is it based on, milestones, or is it just proportionally distributed? Every 2 weeks we're going to invoice you, a percentage. How did you structure that?
We're cost plus. So we
Okay.
bill for work completed. So all the invoices completed the last 2 weeks go on this invoice. And then that goes to the client, and the trades know that. And we've been around for 16 years, so we've got pretty stinking good relationships. So even if there is a hiccup, which there is, I mean, this is the real world we live in. When there is a hiccup, oftentimes we just can call the trade, be like, hey man, we need a day or two here. But usually, it works out. But yeah, so we bill, and then we bill the client for the previous 2 weeks. So we're always running billing for work completed, and then
That's great. What's the average, size of your project? Just curious.
average project size has gone up in recent years for a ton of reasons, but it's usually 600,000 to 700,000 is probably our average, and then we clip around $1 million on some. And our custom homes, of course, it's hard to do a custom home for less than 1.5 million. I feel like anymore,
Sure.
but yeah, so our average project size is 500,000 to 700,000.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. I mean, I know a lot of people are, especially earlier builders, trying to like, well, do we do the fixed price, or do we do the cost plus? Like, I think when you're much smaller projects, cost plus can be a little bit, tougher for them. But as you get into these, 500,000 plus, jobs, I mean, it's hard for you and the end customer to sort of just have a fixed price, not knowing, what we're going into, and just there's so many possible areas that this thing could get changed and go off the rails that, I think it does make sense for builders at that scale.
Yeah, I think the fixed price contracts are for a smaller project size, and once you exceed that size. But the other thing is milestones, right? I got so tired of like how you word your milestones, right? Is it when the drywall is dropped, or is it when the drywall is complete? Is it when the trim is dropped? So there's all that language that we just got rid of. So
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm curious, as you think about, obviously you started off with the smaller, renovations, remodels, like kind of you've kind of grown the size of and the scope of these projects, then ultimately started taking on these new builds. Like, what do you think the biggest differences are, looking at, a smaller remodel to a larger one to a full, home build? Because I see a lot of people, they, they, they kind of dabble in between. They're not really sure if they want to specialize in one or keep doing both. What's it been like for you?
I think the biggest milestone for me was when we were able to clearly define, like when you and I started this conversation, I was like, we focus on large format historic renovations and additions. 15 years ago or 10 years ago, I would say we do countertops, cabinets, kitchens, bathrooms. We'll do a roof. We'll do window replacement. So, and that's one of the things they're always preaching. And I say everyone is like, be able to say what you do and clearly define what it is you do. Jack of all trades, master of none, right? So that was a big thing when we're able to finally, like, this is what we do and this is how we do it. That was a big, like, stepping stone for us. So, yeah, remind me of the question again. I got lost.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just curious, kind of like, obviously, when you're able to sort of define, your specialty, your niche, I mean, that I'm sure helped your marketing, your approach, your targeting of, who is your ideal customer. But also, like, I mean, what would you say the differences of, like, managing those projects?
Yeah, overhead, right? So like that now we can't really do a bathroom. Well, we can. Let me take that back. We can, but our overhead is like significant because we have PMs, we have operations, we have controller, we have a CFO, we have a selections coordinator. Whereas 10 years ago, it was a much smaller staff. So we could do those smaller projects and still be competitive. Do people still hire us for small projects? Yes, but it's because they want that level of service and they want that level of, oh, these guys have someone who, it's not Matt doing the billing on Friday. So I think the biggest thing is being able to scale up and have all this staff. You're almost, I don't want to say forced into larger projects, but we certainly know that that's where we can justify our price. Whereas if we dip down in those bathrooms, again, we do them, but it's usually a couple doors down from a larger scale project. And it's easy for us to be like, all right, well, the PM's already like living down the street. So, and he's got another one right around the corner. So let's just do this bathroom, keep a competitor off the street, right? Keep our sign, so we have like 4 signs on the street instead of just 2 or just 1. So that's been the biggest thing, is just being able to, the overhead piece of it, as you grow and if you want to, you have to add your controllers and your operations people and your project management software and your accounting software and trucks and, all the stuff that goes into it.
And that's interesting. I'd never thought of, when you've got a large project, taking some of the smaller stuff just right there on that same street, just because they see your sign, they know that you're doing that bigger deal, while you're already there, keeping the competitors off the street. That's an interesting approach. And, again, you do already have your crews, constantly in that area. So I could see how that would make sense.
We've got a street right now. It's 2 minutes from our office. We have 5 projects on that street.
Nice.
And we had 1, and then we had 2, and then all of a sudden everyone's calling us on the street. You guys are everywhere. Then it turned into 3, and it's like, oh my, then it's like people are like, oh, we got to use them because they've got 5 signs on our street. They must be the bee's knees. So it's like the more you build that, and we saw them around the corner. And so when you having all those signs, it makes the phone ring on that particular street and that neighborhood some more. But that's certainly like, it definitely has, we notice when we can get 2 signs on a street that will likely have 3, and maybe that third might not come till a month later or 4 months later, but it definitely breeds that familiarity where people are like, well, we need to call them because they seem to be doing a lot of work around here. So they must be doing something right.
Yeah. I mean, obviously those are your best, your best leads too. When they're coming, having been referred from their neighbor, who's going to vouch for you. I mean, seeing that sign day in, day out. And one thing I'll say too, like I have seen some contractors who don't take, I would say, enough care and attention to detail to design that sign and make sure that sign is kept, standing straight up, very presentable. There's nothing worse than when I see a sign that's like halfway fallen over or all the way over and it just looks shoddy. Like that is like you literally have a billboard in their yard and you need to make sure that you maintain that. And with your guys coming in and out, like just that small little like attention to detail, keep that sign up nice. It does go a long way. I mean, when I see a sign falling, I'm like, man, I'm not calling that contractor. He
I
can't even keep the sign standing up straight. What's he doing inside the home?
Yeah, I've got good relationships with many of my competitors. If I see their sign falling, if I don't jump out and like straighten up their sign myself, if I'm just driving by, I don't have time, I'll shoot them a text, be like, "Hey Dan, like your sign's toppling over here, buddy." And then, "Oh, thanks so much." They'll get over there and straighten. But like you say, that's your calling card. And yeah, you see one like laying on its back or it's been run over by the dump truck 5 times. You're exactly
Yeah.
right.
I would also say the city ordinance sign, anything around your sign, also take care of that. Like you want the whole thing to be presentable. It's again, it's that first impression that matters. So, to anyone out there who's not taking care of those little details, I highly suggest you do.
And while we're talking about it, job site cleanliness, right? On the front yard, if it's trashed and say your sign is perfect, but that front yard is trash or looks dangerous or whatever, like job site cleanliness, I am a freak about job site cleanliness. And my team will tell you, be like, man, the job could be going great, but if Matt walks on it and it's trapped, first thing I do is I look around and the framing could be perfect and the wiring could be perfect and the floors could be perfect. But then I'm like, this place is trashed. And the PM's like, but what about it? I'm like, I can't even see through this. I can't even see through all this trash and this mess. So
Yeah.
yeah, we're very particular about job site cleanliness. I think that
When we-
goes right in that line of
We had
site.
we had a contractor recently do our fence, and he had to leave his trailer in front of our house for a few days. And I was driving home late one night, and I noticed there were no like reflectors on the back. Like there was like I'm not even sure if this trailer was street legal, but I was like very concerned. I was like, man, like one of my neighbors, like if they weren't paying attention, like they could easily clip this thing, which is like a large trailer right in the middle of our residential street. Like I'd also say be very mindful of that as well. Like you need to make
Mhm.
sure that just you're leaving a safe place. If you do need to leave your equipment, your trailers, whatever it may be, make sure it's secured and in a safe place.
That image goes a long way, right? When I see an electrician's truck that's clean and shiny, which most of the time the electricians are the ones with the clean shiny trucks, right? And versus the guys that's trash and he hasn't washed it in weeks, it's like, who am I going to call, or who am I more interested in calling?
Yeah.
It's the clean truck, right? I've got a rule with our trucks too, right? Hey guys, every Thursday you knock off an hour early and you go wash the trucks.
Nice.
So
I love that because I mean, your guys, your subs, they're all representing you in your company, and so you need to make sure that they show up how you want your brand to be represented every single time. So I love that, man.
100%.
I'm curious. I want to turn a little bit to your team. Can
Mhm.
you tell us like what's your team look like today? What roles do you have? How many people?
So I think right now we have 14. We're in the process of hiring a project developer, so that's why I'm a little unsure. But the team, so currently we have a COO, a fractional CFO, a full-time controller, selections coordinator, 2 project managers. We range between 2 to 6 carpenters, depending on what we got going on. And then there's some behind the scenes admin support. The biggest thing around that team, I call it, it's the merry band of misfits. And we have a full-time estimator too. That's probably pretty important. And we have a full-time estimator who sits in his cave with computers, and all he does is just do takeoffs and estimate all day long. What I learned is when I stopped hiring for talent and started hiring for culture, it changed everything. It changed longevity of employees. It changed people being emotionally invested. It changed Britt Fuller, who was down at Jell's thing in Texas last week. She and I made a conscious decision, like culture, like because we had a couple guys, highly qualified, like they left the interview and me and Britt were like, oh my, like that guy's amazing. We have to have him. but he was like some redneck that couldn't talk to Susie, the homemaker. Like, we oftentimes as remodelers know, like, the wife is the boss. And if you can't communicate respectfully to her, then like you're out of luck, man. And so we had some hires where like they're on paper, they looked amazing. Everywhere else they looked amazing, and they got on and they just didn't fit with the culture. And then, a lot of things go along with that. But I would say when we started to hire for culture fit, and secondarily was, they got to have some of the skill set, right? That when that was our second, okay, they're a good fit, then everything changed. People started having each other's back. People started going the extra mile. Everyone started caring. It's like, and then all of a sudden I found my team was behind me going like, we need to keep Matt out there making it rain. They didn't want to see me on the job sites. They wanted to see me out there signing jobs. When we were able to get that culture down, man, night and day. That's even like an understatement of the year. Having the culture, the right people, just what I've seen the team do and how they support one another. It'll blow your mind, and how they support me, because they're all supporting one another. It was a total game changer when we just focused on culture.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you. We probably the number one thing I got asked at Job Trade Connect this last week was just like, how have you built this culture? Every single person we talked to, regardless what their role is and who they are, like, they were always so helpful, so friendly, willing to do whatever needed to be done to help that client. And I think that really goes to show exactly what you're saying is like, you got to have the right people in place who are going to embody those core values of your business. And they're going to be the people that you can trust in any situation, whether it's helping their teammate, helping the client, helping, whoever. They're going to show up in the way that you would be proud to have your brand, in your company, and how you would do it yourself. That is so important. And I see it all the time. People have a seat they need to fill, and they think any warm body is better than having an empty seat. And that's just not the case. It can cost you so much time, money, your reputation to bring in the wrong person, even if they're the greatest, most skilled, person at that role. If they're not like the right person for your business and your culture, it isn't the right move.
It can cripple a job. It can cripple a company. It can cripple your balance sheet. I mean, the wrong person can cost you way more than money. And we've learned that the hard way. We had some really talented people that just kind of sucked, and we paid the price for it.
So what's your recruiting process look like? I mean, how do you, first, how do you identify who you need to hire, what roles you need to hire for, and when? And then when you know what you need to hire for, what's that process look like to find them and bring them into the company?
So the roles and when, it's kind of I've developed that over the years, and probably we really didn't have that dialed into maybe 5 years ago, to where we're like, okay, this dollar amount gets a project manager, then a superintendent. And then, picking when you find the right employee, they may do the work of two people, where you don't need a superintendent. You might just need a project manager. So we developed like our needs over time. And then, so now we do have it. We know each project manager can do between $4 and $5 million a year, depending on the job. And then we know that, we worked with our CFO to develop financial milestones. Okay, when we hit here, we know that we need another PM. And then when we also hit here, we know that the controller is going to need a bookkeeper. And then when we hit here, we're going to hire a project developer. And then, so we created that with our CFO and with our operations manager, Brett. And myself, we developed the plan. All right, as we hit these milestones, we'll make these hires. And so that's how we've been doing it for the past probably 4 years. Before that, it was like, all right, we need a PM, we need a couple carpenters, we know we need a controller. But then as our job size got bigger, we're like, oh, we need a selections coordinator, because like the selections are eating the project manager's lunch. Like they can't get to, I want my project managers managing the project, not managing selections. That selection coordinator changed. My project managers became happier. My clients became happier. And it was one of the best hires we made because it was the grease. It just greased everyone in the whole process. It made their job, it made the estimator's job easier. It made everyone's job easier. So some of those we've kind of felt out as we go, and we just kind of refined it over time. And then some of those we are able to identify with financial milestones. Like,
Yeah.
all right, would we hit these targets?
I love that. And I always preach to people, like, regardless how big or small you are, I mean, obviously you all are at a good size scale there, but like even from the very beginning, like I encourage people to build an annual plan, create a budget for the whole year and figure out, like, what are your goals? What's your top line revenue growth? What do you want to sell for that year? Kind of look at what is your cost of goods sold, kind of model out, here's what our gross profit's going to look like. And then here's how many people, like, what's your overhead going to be able to deliver and fulfill all of those jobs, to sell it, to manage it. At the end of the day, you're going to need your back office staff, kind of all that overhead there. Like, build a financial model, and that will help you know when is the right time to bring on more people so that you can financially, and even more importantly, from a cash flow standpoint, you can afford it.
Yeah.
And I know people are always weary. I don't know how to do financial modeling and yada yada. I'm just like, start somewhere, make some assumptions, and every year you're gonna get better when you look back and say, well, where did we miss? And
Yeah.
then you refine those assumptions, and like you can improve over time. I mean,
Mm.
that's the foundation of knowing when is the right time to hire.
100%. And one of the main drivers in our company was that fractional CFO. Like he helped us divide. He's like, all right, he does all that financial modeling, all that stuff that is so confusing to us contractors. Like he developed all right. He looked at the previous 3 years and we like, all right, well, where do we want to be? Okay. All right. To get there, how much work do we need to sell to support our current staff? Okay. So he did all that modeling for us, in a bunch of spreadsheets. And like he even has to explain it to me and Britt and everyone. It's still pretty complex, but that CFO piece, two things I recommend to any contractor of any size is get you a bookkeeper, like immediately. Like that should be your first hire, not a PM. Well, I say not a PM, but for us, it was like, get a bookkeeper. But that fractional CFO, because the CFO is a heavy lift, even for us, like where our revenue's at, like to have a full-time CFO, we're not there. We will be maybe, but a fractional one, like it was a godsend. When we hired him, is like, oh my gosh, because all this stuff as an owner, you're kind of a shade tree CFO, right? Like you kind of, you know enough, you've been to some seminars, you've done some webinars, you kind of like paid attention when your CPA was talking, and you've been in these forums and stuff. But to have it like a true CFO say, oh, here's the model and here is what you will make, is as long as you're selling this much per month and per year. And Matt, like, we're $500,000 behind in sales. What are you going to do? Oh, okay. Well, we got a $600,000 one on the hook right now. So maybe
Yep.
that'll cure it. But that financial modeling is so important. And now it's so affordable with fractional. You can get fractional anything, but I would say that fractional CFO is worth its weight in gold to any size company, because you can afford it at any size. You're only going to pay him for the work he's doing. So, and a good one, if he can't produce that, you don't need him, but a good one's going to be able to tell you all that stuff, which I can't recommend that highly enough. A fractional CFO changed the way we do business.
Yeah, that's such great advice, and I also echo, like, from day one, you need to make sure that you have a plan to manage your books. This could all be for naught if you go down the road and you do not have a clean set of books, and you end up getting yourself in trouble from a cash flow standpoint, from a tax standpoint, the IRS, like that. You have to set yourself up for success. This is just a cost of doing business. Make sure you have a solid plan. You need a set of books. I mean, QuickBooks, whatever it may be, and then if you don't, you don't have to hire a full-time, bookkeeper, but like find a partner, find somebody who can help you manage the books. That's all there
Uh-huh.
is to it. Like, this is a non-negotiable.
Yeah, period. And like a lot of guys try and do it themselves and they think they're smart enough, but then they get busy and then they're managing the projects. For me, I had to hire a bookkeeper because I just wasn't bright enough to opt to get through QuickBooks. I was like, man, I know how to do construction. I can read spreadsheets, but man, I don't have the patience to sit here and enter these bills and like code them to the jobs. And then like I can approve them and deny them. But so that for me, it was out of necessity because I knew there was no way in that I would ever be able to do that. So we had a part-time bookkeeper, right? Until we could afford a full-time bookkeeper. And then the other piece of that is checks and balances, right? Make sure somebody's looking over that bookkeeper's shoulder, right? You want to make sure, because a lot of us have had people steal, or sometimes it's not even stealing. Like it said, they may miscategorize a tax payment and then you're getting penalized. You paid the money, so you think you're good, but then they coded it wrong when they're entering it. And then all of a sudden you owe the IRS $30,000. And you're like, where'd that come from? They're like, well, your bookkeeper miscoded these 941 taxes. You're like, oh my gosh, what do I do now? So, yeah,
no, that's definitely great advice. I mean, again, the money, you got to have a handle on the money, the cash. It is so important. And, just like you said, I mean, like as a business owner, like you don't need to go get a degree in this stuff, but like you do need to pay attention and you do need to be clued in. You need to make sure that they're walking you through everything, answering any questions, and this is where, again, you can bring in a CPA at the end of the year, like bring in a fractional CFO, bring in somebody to just kind of take a quick look, make sure everything looks right. Because, to somebody who's a veteran in this stuff, they're going to spot these issues pretty quickly. The last thing I want to see is someone stealing from you or just doing a bad job, because the longer that goes on, the more it compounds.
Yeah, I was about to say it compounds. Yep.
So look, as we wrap up, I mean, I'd be curious to hear, what would you say when you are looking back, what has been the biggest challenge that you've had building this business, or what advice would you give others that you wish you would have known back in 2008 when you started this, that you now know that you think might help someone else who's early in their career, early in their business? Just what advice might you have for them?
Focus on the people before profit. I was so focused on top line revenue. I was like, I want to get to 1 million. Oh man, I got 2 million. I want to get to 1.5 million. I want to get to 2 million. And I was so focused on revenue. And I had people, but when I started, back to what I was saying earlier about that culture, when I started focusing on the people and not the profit, and not, you got to pay attention to the profit, you got to pay attention to the revenue. But as I focused on people, the money just came and the jobs just came. As I started getting the right people in the right seat on the bus, everything else fell into place. As when didn't have to I hired the right people. They figured out the how and the where and the why and all that. And so focus on your people. If you want to build a company and have a team, it is about the people. Profit will follow. Money, revenue, top line revenue will follow if you have the right people in the right seat. So I would say focus on the people. That is more important than profit. Profit will take care of itself.
I love that. Jim Collins' book, Good to Great. That's the biggest takeaway I had was, get the right people on the bus, the right people in the right seats, sometimes the wrong people off the bus, and then you can figure out how to drive that bus, where to take it as a team. And like, that's so important. I could not agree more with you. At the end of the day, when you build a great team who is representing your brand, who is basically doing what you would do yourself if you were able to, when they can be that extension, and that team is so important that you can trust them, to be there, and they're the ones on the front lines. They're the ones on the job site dealing with the issues, coming up with the solutions, interacting with the clients every single day. Focus on making sure you got the right team in place, and you will set yourself up for success. I think too, like, this is a journey. Being an entrepreneur, being a business owner, like it is not easy. And you are going to have a lot of ups and a lot of downs. But when you surround yourself with people that you care about and that you want to spend your time with, and that you view as, as family, it makes that journey so much easier, so much more enjoyable, so much more fun and rewarding. People want to win with the people that they want to be with and that they want on their team. So go build the right team.
Yeah, and when things get tough, those people stand behind you. When things get heavy, things get hard, like they're not just going to bounce at the first like blip on the radar.
Yeah.
You get the wrong people on the bus. They see like a little rocky waters ahead, or maybe you're in the rocky waters and you're navigating that, and they just decide like, man, this is too, I'm out. Like, I'm gone. I'm over here. These guys got it figured out. I'm gonna go work for them. But when you got those people who are invested, they're gonna ride, you know, they're gonna ride when it ain't so great. And that's important too, right? Because it's not, like you said, it's a journey. It's not always great, and oftentimes it can be very challenging. So having those people to get your back, as it were, I think is
100%. One last question too. So what's the larger vision here? Where do you want to take the business? Like in 5 to 10 years, where are we going to see, building company number 7?
That's a great question. As I've 16 years in, I've been kind of pondering that a lot. I've been talking to PE firms. I've been talking to exit specialists. I've been talking to my team, and like, what do they want? Like when we were doing pretty well 5 years ago, and the team came to me and they're like, hey, what's next? I was like, what do you mean? Like, things are great. I've got a good check. You've got a good check. And they're like, well, what we want to, like, what are we going to do? And so they said, I said, well, we can grow, but everyone here at the staffing has to raise their hand and say aye. Otherwise I can't do it. I'm too tired. I'm too old. I don't want to like just keep charging. Because I was comfortable and it was good, but they said, we're going to do it. So I had buy-in from everyone on the team. So to be honest, like, my kids are a great age right now. And to me, it's about time. So for me, I've got a machine that we want to keep building it, having the right people on the bus. And I don't know what it holds. I think definitely I'm going to hold on to it. And, just time is payment for me. So if I have time with my kids, if I have time with my family and friends, that's the end goal for me. And then, as I if I do fade to gray or fade to black, I would like to see my employees take over. So maybe it looks like, honestly, what looks most attractive to me, if my people want it, would be an ESOP, to where the employees take the company over, or some version of that. But I would hate to just, wrap it up into PE and then just set sail. I don't know that, I've built this great family, and I'd hate to see, that disintegrate. So that's, I don't know, it's not super clear, but that's definitely like exploring.
Yeah. No, I love that answer. I'm so glad you said that, because I can tell and see the passion for what you're doing, for the team you've built. And again, like, just like you said about, you don't need to focus on the revenues and profits that will come. You have built a great team and a great business that's bringing you a lot of joy, and you have been able to set yourself up to have that nice balance between working and family, enjoyment. You are putting a lot of food on the table for a whole lot of people, while also delivering great customer experiences to your clients. And again, people, like, you don't need to focus on the end game all the time. Like, you just enjoy the journey. And when you find yourself in a role that you truly love, and you want to wake up every single day, it doesn't feel like a job. It feels like a passion. It feels like a hobby, and you're winning every day. And that's what's so exciting. And so, I would much rather everyone be able to find their way to be in the position that you're in, Matt, where you're loving life and you're building a great business, but you also get to spend that time and have that balance, with your family. I truly believe that's what this is all about. Life is too short to not spend your time doing what you love. And at the end of the day, money will come and go. As Zig Ziglar said, I've had money, I've not had money. You sure rather have it than not have it. But, like, really figure out how to make sure that you are fulfilled and happy and enjoying what you do. And I think, you're a great example of how to do that. I'm so glad that you came on here, Matt, and you shared your story with us, because this truly is a great, example for everyone else to follow. You learned from experience, you learned from that other guy who started that first business, and you implemented and made the changes that you knew that you needed to make from the very beginning. And I hope that everyone out there listening, has taken away some very solid bullet points here on what they can go do immediately to improve their business, to set themselves up to have that same level of success. So I want to thank you for coming on and for sharing this story, Matt. I really appreciate it. And I can't wait to see where the future holds for you, and to watch you guys keep growing and building an even better team, even better business, because you guys are just top notch.
I appreciate that. It was a pleasure being here. Thanks for listening. And yeah, it's getting good. So I'm along for the ride.
Awesome. All right, we'll talk to you soon.
All
See
right,
you, Matt.
cheers. Take care.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Builder Stories. We hope you enjoyed the conversation and gained valuable insights that can help you in your journey along the way. Don't forget to subscribe to the show and leave us a review. And as always, if you or someone you know has a story to share, please contact us at builderstories.com. We'd love to hear from you. I'm Eric Fortenberry, and remember, every builder has a unique story. Keep building yours.